Police are now investigating two cases of murder after the death of the well-known liquidator Cloete Murray, who was shot and wounded in Midrand, Johannesburg yesterday. His son Tom Murray was killed in the suspected hit which happened on Newroad off-ramp on the N1 North. Police have confirmed that Murray succumbed to wounds in hospital this morning. Murray was the court-appointed liquidator for state contractor Bosasa, whose executives were implicated in state capture allegations. Bosasa was implicated in rampant corruption under the watch of Gavin Watson, who died in a car crash in August 2019. Cloete Murray was also involved in several high-profile insolvency cases, including corruption within Eskom and other tentacles of state capture. Well, on this now, we are now joined via Zoom by John Clarke, who is a social worker and whistleblower advocate providing counselling to whistleblowers. A very good afternoon to you, sir. Thanks for joining us here on SABC News.
Thank you, Flo. Thank you, and deep condolences to the family. I can't imagine what they're going through right now.
Yeah, and you know, what do you make of this particular murder? A well-known liquidator dealing with what many would say are controversial companies.
Well, it's early days, and I always counsel my clients not to jump to conclusions, to test all their assumptions that they've made, to wait for other confirmatory or disconfirmatory evidence, and to develop a number of scenarios and theories as to what could happen, which is what the police and obviously good investigators would do. Now, I am aware so far in testing my own assumptions that, you know, the liquidator industry and the industry that looks at basically business rescue, that there is quite a bit of competition amongst them. So there's one possible motive, that there were others who just were jealous of the fact that they were getting all this business. Yeah. So, you know, the fact that they happen to be investigating Bosasa, of course, that leads you to a certain particular kind of potential theory. Yeah. But don't let's jump to conclusions. And I think the underlying point is, of course, is that the social contract that exists in society is not a social contract first and foremost between the citizens and the state. It's between citizens, and the state's responsibility is to actually protect that and support that work when citizens don't do their job. However, when it comes to criminal justice, citizens cannot be expected to do the work of a professionalized state entity like the police and the National Prosecuting Authority. And I think my concern is, let's try and learn from this experience to reinforce every effort that we can make to ensure that one of my friends called it the thugocracy that runs our country, actually are held accountable, that they are found. And the last point to make, Flo, is that if the South African state had got its act together to protect and support whistleblowers 3 years ago, when the whole issue started coming to the fore, perhaps we would already know what had happened. Perhaps it wouldn't have happened because we would have had an intelligence source from people that were incentivized, that were protected and supported to make sure that we know what's going on in this thugocracy. Yeah. And of course, the thugocracy knows that whistleblowers are so crucial and would be bad for business. So I would want to say, hopefully it'd be some consolation to the family and to others. How can we make some meaning and purpose out of this tragedy to say, we are not going to allow our state to further slide into the control and the dominance of the thugs that currently run the show.
Mr. Clarke, you caution against, jumping to conclusions and, making certain assumptions. And I mean, you've painted one scenario as it is, but, when this story sort of came out, people were kind of making links to the Gavin Watson situation. And I'm sure that there are many conspiracy theories linked to Gavin Watson's death. In fact, some even saying he might not even have died in the first place and he's in hiding somewhere. But, when you looked at this on the surface, did you at any point kind of make any sort of link to Gavin Watson? I mean, no doubt both linked to Bosasa in some way.
You're asking me to step way, way out of my lane as a social worker.
Yeah.
And I don't understand it, because, of course, you as a journalist have the same problem that you have to deal with, because in the absence of the proper authorities doing their job, we're left up to having to speculate. I mean, and I'm not just been monitoring the Bosasa story and Angelo Grizzi. Look at the Senzo Mayiwa case.
Yeah.
There are all sorts of conspiracy theories about it. Why? Because after 8 years, there's still no prosecution and conclusion to that. And we can see in that sense the criminal justice system's on trial. The point is, really, Flo, is that I'm a social worker. I must stay in my lane. I'm not there to pass judgment and to theorize. I'm there to give evidence that I have, to my knowledge, obtained with the consent, obviously, of my clients and with due confidentiality, that will help the investigators get to the bottom of things. And that's all I'm wanting to do. I've actually already asked the deputy director of the NPA. I had a chat with him just the other day, Rodney de Kock, and I said, please, on this question of Angelo Grizzi and his trial, please, I would like to be available to the investigators as to why this trial's been delayed for so long. He said he would undertake to ensure that that the people responsible would let me know. Yeah. And let me say, I hope he will let them know. I still haven't heard from them. So the citizens have a responsibility to help the state govern, in as much as they need to be there to give witness to evidence that they have. They need to deter crime by making sure the culture that prevails, unfortunately, is just so antithetical or kind of inhospitable to a climate of whistleblowing. And I don't know what more to do other than to keep making that point and hoping that the ANC is a governing party, that the opposition parties, that everyone can basically take note of that. And let's join together and start saying, look, we're all going to go down in this maelstrom if we don't all somehow find common cause. And South Africa's got a wonderful constitution. I mean, the Bill of Rights and the opening chapters are just so good. Yep. And that's the basis of our social contract. For goodness sake, let's just start using it, given that Human Rights Day is coming up on the 21st of March. Well, let's see that be a turning point where we're going to roll back this mudslide.
Let's go back to your lane then, Mr. Clarke, then, and talk about, your work then as a social worker and providing counselling to whistleblowers. And when we see situations like this where even potential whistleblowers are killed and there's fear that they might actually start talking, this does then serve as some sort of a deterrence for usually we say would-be criminals, but for would-be whistleblowers. And in the work that you've done, do you find that whistleblowers just tend to sort of this counseling that you do, they just sort of say, you know what, it's actually not worth my life and there's no point to this actually?
Yeah, I mean, a very interesting insight came to you along that line. Our criminal justice system is there to ensure that deterrence of crime should happen at the point of judgment and sentencing. What we've seen happen is that the investigation and prosecution stage has now come to be where deterrence happens and punishment happens, with complete disregard for the presumption of innocence. So we're seeing investigators and some prosecutors who basically use the investigation process to punish people. But what are they punishing them for? For good citizenship, not bad. Punishing them for being truthful, disincentivizing people that would want to play their role in society. So, I just would like people to reflect on that one and just think how extraordinary that is. And all the evidence in my role as a justice monitor that's coming my way, and I confess I might be subject to confirmation bias because I'm now seeing people that are really in the suffering as a consequence of that. Yeah. But I would want to say that that seems to be the latest hit has been another illustration. Maybe that those people were wanting to deter others from going ahead and coming forth with truth. And truth is the only thing that's going to set us free. Yeah. And I would just hope that we start making sure in every way possible we eliminate the barriers to that truth.
All right, Mr. Clarke, thank you for giving us your time. Certainly appreciate you having a chat with us here on SABC News.
Bless you. Thank you so much, Flo.
You're most welcome. That is John Clarke, social worker providing counselling to whistleblowers.